Hello again. I must first make an awful admission. When I watched the video of Professor Brittney Cooper, to which I provide a link in the description to this video, I was overcome by a wave of prejudice. Not, I hasten to add, about the colour of her skin, but regarding her name. Let me explain. Many secondary school teachers play a game at the beginning of a term when they know nothing but the names of the children they will be teaching, nothing else at all about them. They try to guess which of them will be good students and which will be troublesome. So any weird name beginning with a J, like Jaden or Jarmadius, is apt to be a problem, as are girls named after cars or alcoholic drinks. Mercedes, Champagne, Bacardi and so on. The good professor's Christian name, Brittney, is one which many teachers associate with poor educational outcomes. This proved to be spot on with Brittney Cooper. During her awful rant in which she called for white people to be taken out, she also suggested that only white people had ever engaged in colonialism, slavery or genocide, saying that's what white human beings do. Prior to them, black and brown people have sailed across oceans interacting with each other for centuries without total subjugation and colonialism. I will leave aside the question of black people sailing across oceans prior to white people. Did Africans have ocean-going vessels before the arrival of Europeans? More research needed there, I think. I want to focus instead on the idea that black and brown people only interacted peacefully with each other prior to white people being involved. Judging by Brittney Cooper's appearance, I am guessing that she is of black African heritage. Specifically, she has the appearance of being a descendant of Bantus rather than pygmies or Khoisan Bushmen. The other two main ethnicities of sub-Saharan Africa, of course. This means that her ancestors are guilty of genocide, colonialism and slavery. At roughly the same time that Indo-Europeans were moving to Europe and the Indian subcontinent, a distinct ethnic group lived in what is now Cameroon and Nigeria. These people, like the Indo-Europeans, shared a common language. Like the Indo-Europeans, they began spreading out from their homeland and colonising other territories, until they dominated the entire African continent. These were the Bantu-speaking tribes of West Africa, the name of whose language has become synonymous with their ethnicity. The reason for this sudden expansion probably had something to do with the adoption by the Bantu of settled agricultural lifestyle. They cultivated yams and so on. In appearance, the Bantu are what most of us think of when we hear mention of black Africans. If we imagine someone from the modern country of Nigeria or Ghana, this tells us what the Bantu look like. The more African ancestry they have, the more that people of Caribbean heritage, together with African Americans like Brittney Cooper, the more that they actually resemble the Bantu. For most of us, this is the default setting when we think of black people. The evidence suggests that sometime between 3000 and 2500 BC, the Bantu began cultivating yams, that is to say planting and harvesting them, thus establishing farming as a way of life. These people had no understanding of fertiliser or the depletion of nutrients in the soil after it had been cultivated for a year or two. All they knew was that fresh land grew bigger yams, which meant tilling new fields every few years. So it was that after a few centuries of cultivating yams in this way, the Bantu began moving south and east from their ancestral homeland, looking for new places to plant farms and grow their yams. They began moving south and east, which led them in one direction to the rainforest of Central Africa and in the other to the savannas in the south. There they came into contact with the two other major ethnic groups which inhabited sub-Saharan Africa at this time. The greater part of Africa, 2,500 BC, was divided between the people we now think of as pygmies and also the Khoi, sometimes known as Bushmen, though the expression is now regarded as impolite, verging on the offensive. The pygmies, who were considerably smaller than the Bantu, lived in the vast forests which covered equatorial Africa at that time. In the east and south of Africa lived the Khoi. The Khoisan have the most ancient lineage of any human population in the world. They might be said to be the original humans. At the time of which we are speaking, they ranged over the whole of southern and eastern Africa. Although they were mostly like pygmies, hunter-gatherers, the Khoisan were on the cusp of pastoralism. This means that some of them were keeping herds of animals which moved with their owners in a similar way to the wandering Bedouin of the Sinai Peninsula who roamed the desert with their flocks of goats. The Khoisan were very different in appearance to the Bantu. For one thing, their skin was much paler, and for another, their facial features had more in common with people living in East Asia than they did with Bantu. Like many Asians, the Khoisan have an epicanthic eyefold. As the Bantu moved out of their own homeland, they practised what is known as slash and burn agriculture. When they reached the rainforest, they would chop down a section of it and then burn it. All this would enrich the soil for a few years, and so they would settle and plant yams. Then, when the yields began to decline, they moved on. The pygmies and Khoisan who resisted this encroachment upon their territory would have been at a huge disadvantage. Both groups were physically slighter than the Bantu, who were tall, healthy and strong with a steady diet of nutritious food. As they colonised the continent, they killed, mated with, or enslaved those with whom they came into contact. Today the Bantu rule supreme in Africa, and the pygmies of Khoisan live only in fragmented and geographically isolated pockets of land. The relevance of this account to ancient migration is that it was essentially the Bantu colonising Africa. It may be said that slavery existed from the earliest times in Africa, at least 4,000 years ago. Even to this day, the Bantu in countries such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo keep pygmies as slaves. It's openly asserted there that they regard the pygmies almost as pets. So much for black people in Africa and their colonialism, genocide and slavery. Another good example of non-Europeans engaging in these activities would be the Mongols, who, led by Genghis Khan, forged an empire which covered Mongolia, China, much of what is now Russia, and also made advances into Europe. Countless millions died in the course of this colonialism. Many others were reduced to slavery. The fact that Brittney Cooper does not know about any of this and thinks that only white people are guilty of such things suggests to me that she's probably an ignorant fool. How she managed to become a professor is something of a mystery. At the very least, she should consider the legacy of colonialism for which her own ancestors are guilty before she starts in on the sins of white Europeans.